before I get into this video, I just wanted to have a disclaimer. This is a very serious topic. It is not my normal sit-down video, but what sparked me to want to film this to begin with was after a conversation and like an evening me and my best friend had about this topic. We watched the documentary and we watched the live CNN footage. I believe it was CNN, before anything had happened and then during. And watching this at the age that I am now, because I was alive when 9/11 happened, it put things into a completely different perspective. With what I do for work, with the career field that I have chose, this is obviously a very sensitive topic, so I just want to say that before I get started so people aren't like, what in the world? And I will have it in the title and everything so people know. So I actually went and pulled up the timeline to follow this. I didn't want to mess up any of the facts of what happened. On a clear, sunny, late summer day in September 2001, Al-Qaeda terrorists aboard 3 hijacked passenger planes carried out coordinated suicide attacks against the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing everyone on board the planes and nearly 3,000 people on the ground. A 4th plane crashed into a Pennsylvania field, killing all on board after passengers and crew attempted to wrest control from the hijackers. Below is the chronological order of the events of 9/11 as they unfolded. All times are in Eastern Daylight Time. So at 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 with 92 people aboard, takes off from Boston Logan's International Airport en route to Los Angeles. So I just worked a trip out of Dulles, and so maybe it was 2 days prior to this was when we sat down and had watched these videos. And in 2001 when it happened, I believe I was in the first or second grade. I want to say the second grade. And when it happened, at that age, you're so young, you don't really understand what's going on, or you can't really grasp what a big thing that this was at that age. You're just like, okay, it's being explained to us. I remember us being all pulled into a chapel service, and Brother Step Martin was telling us, explaining to us what happened. I don't think we had any of the news footage quite at that moment, but this was also when the first plane hit, so they were just, kind of giving us a heads up. I remember parents coming and picking up their kids out of school, but at this point, I didn't really know. And this is one of those things that I was explaining to Hunter, like, hearing this at this age, and with what I do, my perspective and my opinion on it has completely changed, only because it was so long ago for me, but at the same time, it's something that has affected what I do to this day. And you just get a different outlook and a different opinion on it whenever you work in the aviation field. Like, I've boarded a 767 plane. I know how many people can go on board. I know how big that plane is. I know the impact that just crashing on a runway would have, more or less a building. And the fact that it wasn't empty, the fact that it wasn't full, is more of a blessing. But even so, that was 92 people on board that flight. So, I've worked Boston to Los Angeles before, but anyway, that happened at 7:59 a.m. Then at 8:14 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767 with 65 people aboard, takes off from Boston, and it was also headed to Los Angeles. At 8:15 a.m., flight attendants aboard Flight 11 alert ground personnel that the plane has been hijacked. American Airlines notifies the FBI. And also these plane numbers, these flight numbers no longer exist. So on all these flights, that's no longer a thing. You can't fly a Flight 11. You can't fly, Flight 77 ever. Those numbers are now removed. At 8:20 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from Dulles International Airport outside of Washington, D.C. The Boeing 757 is headed to L.A. or to Los Angeles with 64 people on board. At 8:24, I don't want to mispronounce their names, but a hijacker makes the first of 2 accidental transmissions from Flight 11 to ground control, apparently in an attempt to communicate with the plane's cabin. And at 8:40, the FAA alerts North American Airspace Defense Command about the suspected hijacking, and there's a lot of acronyms in this. But anyway, they say that they are not yet in the air when it crashes into the North Tower. So the CNN footage that we watched, it's one of those that I think was just kind of set up on a building. Mind you, this is 2001. There's no Snapchat and Instagram and all of this, how we can instantly live stream on our phones and all of this. This is back when cell phones are not as capable as they are now. So the news reporter's standing there, she's doing her thing, and the first plane hits, and they show that footage. And at this point, especially in the documentary, and from what the newscasters were saying, they thought maybe it was a navigational system error or something with the pilot. They didn't think at that point that this was an attack. They also thought, maybe it could have been a suicide attempt just from that single individual. It wasn't really until the second plane hit, I believe. Now, also, this is my opinion from what I'm taking on this, that they knew we were under attack. So at 8:41 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757 with 44 people aboard, takes off from Newark International en route to San Francisco. It had been scheduled to depart at 8, around the time of the other hijacked flights. At 8:46, the hijackers aboard American Airlines Flight 11 crashed the plane into floors 93 through 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing everyone on board and hundreds inside the building. And then within seconds, the NYPD and FDNY forces dispatch units to the World Trade Center. So, watching this once again, you see the first plane hit, and I know the impact a 757 and a 767 would have, and I never saw the Twin Towers in real life. I've been to New York several times and seen the new one, but I've never actually been inside of that building. But a plane that size and a building that large, I know there's conspiracy theories out there as well about, you can YouTube it. I'm not going to get into all of that, but when the first plane hit, you see all the smoke from the building, you see the impact that it has, and at that point, the one behind it actually is going to collapse first, but I don't want to mess up the timeline. So at 8:50, the White House Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, alerts President George W. Bush that the plane has hit the World Trade Center, and the president was visiting an elementary school in Sarasota, Florida. So you actually see the footage as well whenever he comes up to him and he whispers in his ear, because that's one of those things where unless it's something pressing, you don't interrupt. So he tells him what has happened, and the look on his face, I commend him for keeping his composure the way he did in front of all those children, because no one in the building knows at that point, and people knew, but obviously those children, the teachers, they did not, and there's all these reporters watching him as well. So you see his face, and you see that look, that look. He really did keep it together considering what was going on. At 9:02 a.m., after initially instructing tenants out of the WTC South Tower to remain in the building, Port Authority officials broadcast orders to evacuate both towers via the public address system. An estimated 10,000 to 14,000 people are already in the process of evacuating. And at 9:03, hijackers crashed United Airlines Flight 175 into floors 75 through 85 of the WTC's South Tower, killing everyone on board and hundreds inside the building. The FAA bans, this is at 9:08, the FAA bans all takeoffs of flights going to New York City or through the airspace around New York City. And at 9:21, the Port Authority closes all bridges and tunnels in the New York City area. At 9:24, the FAA notifies NEADS of the suspected hijacking of Flight 77 after some passengers and crew aboard are able to alert family members on the ground. At 9:31, speaking from Florida, President Bush calls the events in New York City an apparent terrorist attack on our country. And at 9:37 a.m., hijackers aboard Flight 77 crashed a plane into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing 59 aboard the plane and 125 military and civilian personnel inside of the building. And this was, like, when I heard this still, just now, it gave me chills. 9:42 a.m., for the first time in history, the FAA grounds all flights over or bound for the continental United States. Over the next 2.5 hours, some 3,300 commercial flights and 1,200 private planes are guided to land in airports in Canada and the United States. And I know I do have crew members that watch these flights, pilots as well as flight attendants, from all airlines and all walks of life and all different parts, as far as regional, mainline carriers, everything. But can you imagine going to work or being on a layover or being mid-trip and every flight in the United States has ceased? Like, at the time, I actually did have an aunt who was gonna fly out from Chicago that day, and she couldn't get out of Chicago for 4 days. Nothing was leaving. Nothing could leave. And they said, I forget what airport it was, but the runway was just lined up, just full of planes after plane, because you have to land. You only have so much fuel. At some point, you've got to get on the ground, and you're trying to keep as many people safe and get away from what all is going on as quickly as you can. So at 9:45, amid escalating rumors of other attacks, the White House and the U.S. Capitol buildings are evacuated, along with numerous high-profile buildings, landmarks, and public spaces. And at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. Watching the tower actually collapse, it's just one of those things where I can't imagine the people that saw that in real life that day. The smoke, the way they said the silence surrounded it whenever you were walking through it, for those that were able to get away because they didn't want to breathe in the debris, for the people that rushed to the towers to try to get people out that lost their lives that way. A building that size collapsing. It's insane. I'm going to keep reading. At 10:06 a.m., after passengers and crew members aboard the hijacked Flight 93 contact friends and family and learn about the attacks in New York and Washington, they attempt to retake the plane. They attempt to retake the plane. In response, hijackers deliberately crashed the plane into a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all 40 passengers and crew on board. At 10:28 a.m., the World Trade Center's North Tower collapses 102 minutes after being struck by Flight 11. At 1 p.m. from a U.S. Air Force base in Louisiana, President Bush announces that U.S. military forces are on high alert worldwide. So another thing that hit home was that he came here. We have a military base called Barksdale, which this is public knowledge. It's not like I'm giving away a secret or anything. But yeah, he did come to Louisiana. And I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I think the news some kind of way might have announced his location, and he had to be removed. He had to be taken and obviously relocated. Like, his safety is a huge priority at that point. And the country that he is in charge of is under attack, so it was very important to get him to a safe location. And another thing I forgot to mention or point out was whenever he was in Florida, when you are the president, you do travel with Air Force One, and you can Google and see all about that. And they do have flight attendants as well. And they said there was another plane coming into Florida, and I don't know how all that works. That would be a question for pilots, but some kind of way they weren't able to make contact with the other plane as quickly as they planned on it, and they ended up turning around and just taking off. They said the flight attendants were screaming and yelling at everyone to get into their seat because they just needed to get out as quickly as possible to protect everyone that was on board. At 2:51 p.m., the U.S. Navy dispatches missile destroys to New York and Washington, D.C. At 5:20 p.m., the 47-story 7 World Trade Center collapses after burning for hours. The building had been evacuated in the morning, and there are no casualties, though the collapse forces rescue workers to flee for their lives. At 6:58 p.m., President Bush returns to the White House after stops at military bases in Louisiana and Nebraska. At 8:30 p.m., President Bush addresses the nation, calling the attacks evil, despicable acts of terror, and declaring that America, its friends, and allies would stand together and win the war on terrorism. So that was the timeline of what happened. Those are the facts. And one thing that really stuck with me more so than anything, and on my last trip I was flying out of Dulles, and I was thinking about it on the trip. But that the flight, I don't know why. When I was that young, I knew the 2 planes that crashed and ultimately made the towers fall. Those were the 2 big ones, the 767 and the 757 that hit, and the towers collapsed. But the one that really hits home now is the flight that the passengers and the crew members were on that was headed towards the White House that did not make it. I know I'm gonna cry, you guys. It's just one of those things. I cannot imagine the courage it took to be that person that had to call and tell their family members or whoever the situation, try to explain it to them quickly, and then do something about what was going on. Like I said, phones were not what they are today, so obviously everyone on board that plane wasn't able to reach out to a loved one, and it's one of those things where even if you try to write a letter or record something, if the plane's crashing, there's going to be a fire, and it would have destroyed anything. But I worked with this crew, and it was 4 ladies, and they were fantastic. We were like a little family by the end of our 3-day, and we had a medical as well while we were on the flight, and I was just sitting in my jump seat thinking, I cannot imagine descending or something like that happening where the plane has been compromised, and sitting there knowing like this is it. This is it. So I was sitting there thinking, you have passengers that fall asleep, or that are sitting in middle seats, or families together, or people going who even knows where, and amongst the chaos, or obviously them having to alert everyone on the plane what was going on. I don't even know what the inside of that plane would have been like. The chaos, people that maybe agreed with the decision, people that didn't, what they were thinking, what their last words were, all the people that are attached to them. They were mothers, daughters, fathers, sons, aunts, uncles, friends, colleagues, loved ones, people you might not have necessarily gotten along with, people you passed on the street, someone you just saw in passing but didn't really know. This affected so many lives, and I know after this attack happened, I do remember seeing like all these American flags, and once again I was so young, so there's only little bits and pieces that I recall that kind of stand out. But I remember it being it was just one of those things where, as tragic as it was for a lot of people, I think it did pull them together even tighter, because we felt like, I can't believe this happened to us. Nobody wants this to happen. I would never wish something like this on any country, obviously not. But it was just one of those things where when it hits home like this, you just really think, wow, I can't believe this happened to us. I don't know if it's like morbid to think about that now, because I do work in this field. I feel very safe doing what I do. I feel in very capable hands with the pilots we fly with the flight attendants that I work with, and I know we would all pull together and do what we had to do at the end of the day. But those people were really heroes. I don't know what was going on those planes right before, leading up to. I can only imagine. But every single person that was inside that aircraft in my book, is a hero, except for the people that were obviously responsible for planning this out and making it happen. But another thing that really stuck with me, and I don't know it. So when the plane hit the building, obviously there was a response person that was saying no one was going to be able to get to any body that was from where the plane hit up, especially before the tower collapsed. They thought maybe some kind of way they could evacuate it quick enough. Like, I don't know at that point, I don't know all of that with buildings and stuff, how that works, and obviously people are still running out at this point. But there was a helicopter that was sent out, and I cannot remember all that was going on, like what specifically it was there for, but you could see people coming up to windows or hanging outside on the towers above and below that were waving white flags, that were trying to get their attention, because at that point I think some people thought, oh my goodness, a helicopter is here, it's here to get us. And I don't know how many people worked inside of those buildings, but I can't imagine that a helicopter, if they were even able to get close enough to the building, it would have been, mad chaos. Someone, everyone trying to pile in or something like that. But this was just one of those things where I never ever thought about, I never knew, I never realized until I watched this documentary. When the plane crashed inside of it, I don't know, there was an explosion, and the heat, and with it melting the plane and everything, people were walking up to the windows or backing away from it, and bodies there. And in the video they did show some of them dropping, and that guy was, I don't remember his name or exactly what his title was, but he was like, those weren't considered suicides. It was one of those things where I feel like it's fight or flight within you. But when you're just as a human being under that kind of pressure and around that kind of heat, you're obviously going to try to get away from it. They were basically backing away or trying to get away from the heat, and a lot of people fell out of the building. I think that's the best way to say it, because they didn't jump. They fell out. And the people that were down on the street or within the vicinity hearing the noise or seeing it, you could just hear the screams in some of the videos, and I can't. 9/11 was one of those situations where nothing like that has happened again in aviation history. And in my heart of hearts, I don't know if it's a bad thing to say that, I truly believe nothing like that would ever happen again. Especially we live in an age where there's so much modern technology, and everyone is on these 24/7. And I truly do believe that flying was a different time back then. Well, it was, especially from people that I've talked to that were flying then. Flying has changed a lot over the years. It's not what it used to be. I feel like because I'm based in Washington, D.C., that's kind of why I wanted to say something. Obviously, this happened in 2001, and there are people that watch this that didn't even, might not have even been born when it was happening, or like me, were really young when it happened. Or there are people that are, could comprehend what was going on when it happened. But sitting down and actually watching those, it just really shed a new light on this profession for me. I have so much respect for people that work in aviation and love what they do, and I have so much respect for people that defend this country, and the firefighters, the policemen, the rescue workers, random strangers on the street, anyone whose heart was in the right place and was trying to help out. And for everyone that lost their lives that day, they will never be forgotten. I really do have nothing but love for all of my aviation family, regardless of what part of the airport you work in, what part of the airplane, or where you're based, or where you're located. I have so much respect for people that work in aviation because I know what goes on behind the scenes. I know what we have to deal with in and out, and especially for people that are senior and have been flying for some time and have gotten to see all of the changes over the years. I love flying with senior people. They have the best stories. They have gone through things you would not even believe. People were furloughed when this did happen. A lot of airlines lost business. People were afraid to fly for good reasons. It was just different, and that really changed the way aviation, what it molded into afterwards. Obviously, they've cut down on a lot of things, gotten stricter for security reasons, and it would have been nice, I do think, to see what it was like to fly back then and, get a feel for that, but that's something that can never happen and never will happen. But I know this isn't like I said, a usual topic or a usual thing that I would necessarily have on my channel, and this is obviously not a happy or bubbly or anything like that vlog. This is a very serious thing, but aviation is sometimes it is glamorized, and it is looked at as like a I don't even know, the field in general or a job in general sometimes is glamorized, and really and truly we are here for each and every one of our passengers' safety and to make sure that you get from point A to point B safely. And I can't stop thinking about those people that have to make that decision to crash that plane and lose their lives so that they could protect the White House and protect the people that were there. I'd have nothing but respect for that, and really and truly we will never know what all went on on the planes or what happened, and all we can do is remember that day, remember what happened, respect each other as individuals and the families and everyone who did lose someone close to them. But I just wanted to discuss this. I will have a not so heavy topic on my next vlog. I am going to leave the comments open, but I probably won't respond to comments, just FYI. There's nothing that I really need to say. Like I said, this was just my opinion. I did want to share it. I do encourage, if anyone wants to, maybe to watch those videos, and especially if you do work in the aviation field, watch them. And I don't know, it's just, they're very sad, but it hits home. It really pulls at your heartstrings, pulls at them. So yeah, I'm gonna end this vlog here, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.